Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth podcast. Again, joining us today to review Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, is Nicole Tate. Nicole, welcome, and again, thank you for your time and your perspective in this journey, in this discussion.
Thank you. I'm enjoying this conversation about the book and just going through all of it, so I appreciate it.
You bet. So also today, we're going to talk about the equipment financing chapter. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of interest. I think, to me, this is one of the most exciting chapters in the book. If people can read it and take it for what it is. I think there's a lot of people that get so down and lost in the numbers, they forget about the process. And again, let's just recap why this is important or how we should look at this, right? This is a process about taking control of the banking function in your life. And Nelson is just using this one example about the equipment financing to give us one situation where he actually used it. This was a real live situation for him. And so it is so powerful for us to see and understand how this works. And there are people, I get clients quite often will say, how about these numbers? And they get way deeper than I really think they should, because they don't quite fully understand the concept of the process. I don't know if that's kind of what you see, Nicole, or what's your take on it?
Well, I can tell you that when I first read this chapter, really lost in the numbers of the weeds, and there's a lot of numbers in this chapter. Taking a step back and understanding the process and understanding what we're really trying to accomplish here and not making it about look at the numbers on this side versus that side makes it make more sense in my head.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to translate it from business owner doing equipment financing to individual doing just regular life financing.
Right. Yeah. And again, this is just an application. And so here's a problem I see with whenever we get to a conversation, people say, oh, I want to see the numbers. I'm a number person. Most of the time they're not. But if they are, that's still doesn't excuse them from understanding the process before they understand the numbers, right? So again, we have to have people understand what they're doing before they try to tear the numbers apart, because then they get lost and they want to compare it to things that really shouldn't be in the part of the conversation, right? Because it's about controlling the financing function in your life. It's not about, this rate of return. It's about understanding how come Wells Fargo, how come Bank of America have, multi-billions of dollars of money in properly structured life insurance. Why do they do that? And then when they go to lend it out, how they make money. And if you understand that process, then this is just an example. That's where I think this chapter is so valuable. It's just, it's got so much power here because this is a real life example of how it can be used. So don't get lost in the numbers, because again, the numbers are always going to change, right? The numbers are going to change if you're a female, if you're 50 versus 35, you're rated in good health or bad health, whatever it is. And, what year are we in, right? Are we in this book was written in 2000. The equipment financing was done, I think, in 86 or 84. At the top of my head, I'm kind of lost at what year this was done. But the point is, Nelson was buying policies in 1954, right? So those numbers are going to change depending on what the environment is in the insurance companies. I would say read the numbers so you get the idea, but match the numbers, because they're not going to match just because it's not you and it's not, 2020.
Right.
1999 or 1988 when he sourced this material. So just be real careful. And we'll talk about that at the very end of the chapter. It has an addendum to, we'll touch on that at the end as well. So I think, but idea and the concept and how he lays it out is so valuable, because I get so many people that when they read it, they're kind of lost until they read this chapter, then they get it. And unlike you, and also I've had clients that have said, I get the concept, but I don't get this equipment financing. So sometimes I think there's some things that are lost in the translation.
Yep.
Right at the beginning of the chapter, where he is talking about the fact that you've already established the fact that you agree that dividend paying a whole life insurance policy that's properly structured is all the characteristics of the current banking system. I think that's where the point is, where we have to start from. If we all have to agree to that point before this chapter makes a lot of sense. Any input on that or thought on that?
No, I agree. If you don't understand that or you don't accept that premise, then the rest of you anyway.
Right. Because again, it goes back to the fact that what Nelson was saying was you already have a system that you already know, right? We already have a system in place that is like the one we know. And again, the one we know is the traditional banking system. We're not trying to be Wells Fargo. We're not trying to be Bank of America or Chase or whoever it is. That's not who we're trying to be. We're just trying to emulate some of the processes that they do. If we look at what they do and the systems that are already out there, we can plug and play using a mutual insurance company, and it's the same thought process that they're using. So he goes in there, he says, let's refresh your memory, take the steps to get into the banking business, and then use the same system to enhance the thing that you're already doing. So here's the whole point, is that you're going to do this one way or the other. The question is, who do you want to control that system?
Just talking about this, because he goes on down here and says, suppose that this 30-year-old man in the logging business adopts such a plan and puts $40,000 of capital per year into his banking system. So what dawned on me was the bank's already capitalized. So it's easy to go to the bank. They're already capitalized. Now you have to jump through hoops and do the applications and get the approval and all of that sort of stuff. But in this world where you're going to do this type of financing, you have to, not only do you have to accept the premise that your policy has all the same characteristics, but then you have to capitalize it. And I think maybe that's where I got lost in the beginning, is thinking how you can do this, but you got to put the money in to take the money in.
Right. You know, what goes back to what we talked about in the previous chapters. It takes three things to make this thing work, right? It takes time, money, and discipline. You know, here we're just talking about time. You know, on page 51, and really in the second paragraph, he says you must build the capitalization phase over a period of time, such as a 4-year minimum. I think this is where a lot of people think, I just need to put 4 years into this thing, and then I can start using it. He's just trying to draw an example of at least 4 years, and that's the start of it, right? You know, throughout the chapter, he's all about, you know, maximizing this thing and growing as much as it possibly can be. But for illustration purposes, for conversation purposes, for purposes of writing in the book, he just says, let's really isolate this thing down to just minimum capitalization and just one event, which is financing equipment. Just that one singular event, just so people could get it. Because if you tried to put all the things you could do in here, it would overwhelm most people. And when people are overwhelmed, what do? They typically do nothing, right?
They just walk away.
They walk away. So he was just really trying to frame it down, because he says, you must build the capitalization phase, such as a 4-year minimum. That says minimum, right? That doesn't say maximum. And that's why later on in that paragraph, he goes, when he talks about having additional merchandise, to me, he's talking about, kind of refers back over to the, you'll need additional capital to make the system more profitable. So he goes back to the grocery store and says, he just picks on one item, which is the peas, right? So just to make it easy in our heads, he says, here's one item. And he says, if that's all you're going to do is just peas, you're going to want as many peas on the counter as you can possibly get. So why would you want to limit it? Why would you want to just have 4 cans of peas each time? That seems ridiculous, right? But it's the easiest way for people to understand and get what he was talking. And he says, additional merchandise or capital will improve their profitability. Neither should someone complain about having additional capital or premium paid in their life insurance policy. Remember, we've said this in the past on previous podcasts, that premium isn't the problem, it's the solution.
That's exactly what came to mind.
Because it's all about having inventory. Because once we understand that we are in, the financing business, because again, we are in it, if we like it or not, we have to recognize that we are. And once we understand that we are, we accept that, then our inventory just happens to be cash. It's not hammers, it's not peas, it's not anything else, it just happens to be cash. And the whole point is that with any other inventory, we have to warehouse it somewhere. We have to store it somewhere. Again, attach it to a system that's already built and acts like a bank. So we're going to put our money in a properly structured life insurance policy. And then we need to go put it to work. The next paragraph, he says, there's no licensing required and no customers to seek out, no accounting, no engineering. It's all been done for you beforehand. I find that rather interesting. No customers to seek out. Why do you think he said that, Nicole? Do you have any thoughts?
I hadn't really thought about it.
Personally, what I was thinking is that, we start with ourselves being right. We don't need to seek out a customer. Who's our first best customer?
That would be us.
That would be us, right?
Yes.
And then to his point, he says, once you have access to capital, what's going to happen? Deals will find you. They will search you out.
Right.
And so you really don't need to go find customers. They're going to come and find you. But again, you're going to be your own first customer, because again, you're going to take control of the financing function in your life. But once you've done that and you have your storefront open, people are going to say, hey, I want part of that because I'm tired of having to go to the traditional banks to get my money. Or I know Nicole has, money to lend out, or she has capital. I'm going to go and use her capital to do whatever it is I'm going to do. And it could be financing a piece of equipment. It could be a lot of different things. There's actually, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. It talks about starting your leasing company, but it talks about financing even in hospitals. And there's a guy I know that made more money by financing medical equipment to doctors groups that wouldn't implement this themselves. And he's like, I'm glad they didn't do it, because he said, I was able to run the financing company, the leasing company, on all their medical equipment.
Yes.
And these doctors, for whatever reason, didn't want to accept the fact that they could do it themselves, but they refused to do it, refused to go down this pathway. And so he just said, okay, I'll offer up my money and I'll do it for the same that you're already paying. And he started his own leasing company based around that idea. And so again, he didn't really have to go find them. They're already there. He just had to kind of open up to let them know that's what he does. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.